So if there's no line, is it still useful to talk about things like the origin of life? That's the one of the big open mysteries before us as a human civilization, as scientifically minded, curious Homo sapiens. How did this whole thing start? Are you saying there is no start? Is there a point where you could say that invention right there was the start of it all on Earth?
My suggestion is that much better than trying to, in my experience, much better than trying to define any kind of a line. Okay, because inevitably, I've never found, and people try to, we play this game all the time. When I make my continuum claim, then people try to come up, okay, well, what about this? What about this? And I haven't found one yet that really shoots that down. That you can't zoom in and say, yeah, okay, but right before then this happened, and then if we really look close, like here's a bunch of steps in between, right? Pretty much everything ends up being a continuum. But here's what I think is much more interesting than trying to make that line. I think what's really more useful is trying to understand the transformation process. What is it that happened to scale up? And I'll give you a really dumb example. And we always get into this because people often really, really don't like this continuum view. The word adult, right?
Mhm.
Everybody is going to say, look, I know what a baby is. I know what an adult is. You're crazy to say that there's no difference. I'm not saying there's no difference. What I'm saying is the word adult is really helpful in court because you just need to move things along. And so we've decided that if you're 18, you're an adult. However, what it hides is what it completely conceals is the fact that first of all, nothing happens on your 18th birthday, right? That's special. Second, if you actually look at the data, the car rental companies actually have a much better estimate because they actually look at the accident statistics and they'll say it's about 25 is really what you're looking for, right? So theirs is a little better. It's less arbitrary. But in either case, what it's hiding is the fact that we do not have a good story of what happened from the time that you were an egg to the time that you're the supposed adult, and what is the scaling of personal responsibility, decision-making, judgment. Like these are deep, fundamental questions. Nobody wants to get into that every time somebody, has a traffic ticket. And so, okay, so we've just decided that there's this adult idea. And of course it does come up in court because then somebody has a brain tumor or somebody's eaten too many Twinkies or something has happened. You say, look, that wasn't me. Whoever did that, I was on drugs. Well, why'd you take the drugs? Well, that was yesterday me. Today, this is right. So we get into these very deep questions that are completely glossed over by this idea of an adult. So I think once you start scratching the surface, most of these categories are like that. They're convenient and they're good. It's I get into this with neurons all the time. I'll ask people, what's a neuron? Like, what's really a neuron? And yes, if you're in neurobiology 101, of course you just say, look, these are what neurons look like. Let's just study the neuroanatomy and we're done. But if you really want to understand what's going on, well, neurons develop from other types of cells, and that was a slow and gradual process. And most of the cells in your body do the things that neurons do. So what really is a neuron, right? So once you start scratching this happens. And I have some things that I think are coming out of our lab and others that are, I think, very interesting about the origin of life. But I don't think it's about finding that one boom. Like this is, yeah, there are innovations, right? There are innovations that allow you to scale in an amazing way, for sure. And there are lots of people that study those, right? So things that thermodynamic kind of metabolic things and all kinds of architectures and so on. But I don't think it's about finding a line. I think it's about finding a scaling process.